Hey YouTubers, this is the GSTV reviewer coming at you with the second half of my So Weird Season 2 discussion video for you guys today. Last where we left off, I discussed about the holiday themed episode entitled Fountain. Now we're going to transition over into the episode that came after it, which is entitled Fall. Ned finds out that his childhood friend Sam Hodge is being haunted by the death of their best friend Pete Wells. As children, they were playing by the river one day when Pete accidentally fell off from the cable car and subsequently died. Fast forward in the present day, a reporter is shown taunting Sam Hodge, getting inside his head, and he happens to be a victim haunted by Pete's untimely tragedy. Now, Sam's starting to get these hallucinations recently, reliving all these flashbacks of Pete falling off a high story platform. And he's just constantly getting these sort of flashbacks and hallucinations. Pete not only falling from the cable car, but anywhere he goes, he gets reminded of his best friend and all the events that happened that fateful day. For instance, I believe when they were at Sam's house, he finds Pete standing on top of a rooftop, and Pete accidentally falls, and Sam's just freaking out, and the gang just try to calm him down. And they also get to a psychological therapy. Well, they didn't go to a psychological therapy, but they hire a doctor to come in and check on Sam Hodge's mental condition. It turns out that this had been the second time that he'd been provided psychological treatment. Also in this episode, the events that happen from Strange Geometry, Fee and Molly have struggled to interact with one another. Now, if you watch Strange Geometry, Molly ends up revealing a secret that Rick's fascination of the paranormal, and that he had been doing paranormal investigating just as much as Fee had ended up doing in the years since Rick had passed away. So Fee had been freaking out that she didn't know about the secret, and it just really left her devastated. So thus, they haven't really interacted with one another as much, and Molly's doing all she can to make amends with her daughter. 13th episode was Found, so this aired after Strange Geometry, but they never really made any mention about what had happened. Found was placed before Strange Geometry, so that's why they never acknowledged their falling out, so to speak. But they picked this subject from Strange Geometry, pick up where they left off from the ending of that episode, and paying it off here in the episode Fall. It must have been really difficult for them, considering how much they missed Rick, and especially with Molly, who, was Rick's wife, and Fee was still an infant growing up, so she didn't really know too much about Rick, since she had pretty much vague memories seeing Rick around. I mean, to think what would have happened if Molly had had more secrets than the one that she ended up telling to Fee. I mean, could this lead to them not interacting with one another for a long time? Because it kind of looked like they could have run the risk of potentially jeopardizing their relationship if Molly had kept a lot more secrets than she had already. By the end of the episode, Molly and Fee trying to find a way to make amends, which they eventually did. When I watched this episode the first time around, I was quite shocked to believe that Disney Channel got away with airing this episode. The instant where I saw the kid fall from the high story platform of Sam's house, and even as well as the river, where he was trying to, he was in the cable car and he was trying to go to the other side of the platform, but for some reason the cable car couldn't move. So Pete had to climb rope from rope, and then he lost his grip, and and pretty much that's how he subsequently met his untimely death. So when I watched those moments just flashing by my eyes, I was very shocked that Disney Channel actually got away with airing such an episode like this. It was very intense and quite terrifying at the same time. Now, I do have a couple questions to ask. Like, why didn't Sam seek psychiatric help or therapy, like, the instant that he'd been getting this. I mean, how long did he have this sort of hallucinations? How did he manage to relive this tragic moment for the longest time without anyone close noticing up until this point? So, when the doctor visited his house for checkup, they mentioned that this had been the second time that he provided treatment. I mean, could he have been getting these hallucinations recently? And if so, why didn't he contact his family as soon as possible? Now, this might be just minor nitpicks, unless I missed something, but other than that, it was kind of something I had to ask myself watching this episode and taking notes, so to speak. Nevertheless, I really enjoyed this episode, really enjoyed just the overall premise behind it, and another one of those Ned-driven focus episodes, which I really like some of the Ned episodes. I mean, they don't really get talked about as much, but I think a lot of the Ned episodes I'm really intrigued by, especially the episode with, like I discussed about Mutiny being one of my favorite episodes, where Ned ended up being possessed by the spirit of a pirate. I really enjoyed his acting, but I really enjoyed this episode, with Fall as well. I mean, a lot of so weird episodes, especially in the second season. I would say dark, and it would be pretty much an overstatement. I said a lot of the episodes from season one, and especially season two, was kind of an overstatement of saying that this episode was dark. But a lot of it was very sophisticated, more complex storytelling. Something you don't really find in a lot of kids shows. Well, especially like live action shows that are catered towards a younger audience, particularly children. But the episode just was one of those many examples of that. That, along with Banshee, James Garr, Twin, and Transplant. Those episodes that come to mind, and I'll discuss about those particular episodes as we go along in this video. But Fall was one of those many examples of very sophisticated writing from the second season. And when it's all said and done, Fall was just such a well-written episode, and it definitely got me glued to the screen. So then we get to the episode afterwards, which is the 15th episode of season 2, entitled Destiny. Now, Destiny was one of the episodes I remember watching on the Disney Channel, particularly in reruns, since I didn't get into the show until around the time like Alex Johnson came along with season 3. But seeing the show in reruns, most of it still is fresh in my mind. This was a pretty key important episode. Now, how this episode opens up is that while on the road one late evening, they come across a familiar ball of light, which you might be familiar with if you watch the season 1 finale of So Weird. So as the bus breaks down, the gang goes on to check to see what went wrong with the engines. So in the process, Burkrew places Molly in this trance before taking over her body. Now at first, Fiona is believed to think that Burkrew is out to possess Jack once again. But during a conversation with a former firefighter turned auto mechanic, Fee finds out that Burkrew is actually possessing Molly's vessel. The auto mechanic, who is Mr. Martinez, he is, he used to be a firefighter who was involved in the accident involving Rick during that fateful day that led to his death. When Mr. Martinez tried to check over to see if Rick was okay, something was pretty peculiar about it. Now, Mr. Martinez is starting to get these sort of flashbacks about the fire that happened that fateful day. Well, Burkrew possessing Molly is preventing Fee and Mr. Martinez from striking a conversation with each other, because this would have Fee start to solve a lot more, putting the pieces of the puzzle and solving the mystery a little more about her father, Ray. Molly's performing at a concert where the Moffats guest star in this particular episode. Burkrew's possessing Molly and just acting all zany and whimsical. There was just a lot of very funny stuff from this episode. I really enjoyed Mackenzie Phillips' portrayal of Burkrew. I thought she brought plenty of life in the character. And there's just so many scenes that just had me cracked up laughing about it. But there was one scene I can recall where she placed a pacifier onto Fee's mouth and just insisting her to shut her pie hole. But there was also another instance during rehearsal where Molly changed up the lyrics to the theme song "In the Darkness," which you might know as the TV show's theme song. So I jotted down some lyrics to her misinterpretation of the song, and it went something along these lines: "I live my life in the nick of time. The future is set, no need to whine. Tomorrow's settled as yesterday, so you might as well sit and watch TV all day." And she's just making an ass of herself and just going all out, and just like some of her bandmates are just noticing that she's acting very strange, but they don't even realize she's being possessed by an unknown spirit. I don't know if it's so much that's the lyrics that are funny, but just kind of more of like Mackenzie Phillips's character just really go all ballsy and just making an ass of herself, like I said. But I mean, some of the lyrics is very hysterical, like just having her just shout "Cowabunga, baby," and just really bizarre, hysterical lyrics at the same time. And I'm sure she might have had a blast filming this episode. I wouldn't be surprised if she did. I think a lot of the episodes where the main characters get possessed by some sort of spirit, it just seems to be like the best part about the actors, just really trying to portray different personalities and really understanding the purpose behind those particular villain of the weeks or those particular spiritual characters that would pop up once in a while. Yeah, I definitely really enjoyed Destiny and get to learn a little more about what happened regarding Rick and Mr. Martinez being the firefighter that helped make an attempt to rescue Rick, only to find out that during the fire that he knew that something was wrong, that when he checked on to see if Rick was, checked to see Rick's condition during just before the car exploded, Mr. Martinez finds out that Rick was no longer in this world. And this kind of has Fee sort of shocked and all at the same time. Definitely really enjoyed Destiny. Definitely enjoyed Mackenzie Phillips' portrayal of Burkrew. But this would be... Well, this wouldn't be the last time that Burkrew would appear. He would appear in the first episode of Season 3 entitled Lightning Rod. But we also get a guest appearance by a local Canadian rock band named the Moffats, who it was more of a cameo, but not. They only had a few lines here and there. They didn't play a big part about it. They did perform some of their songs. Well, technically one song, which was called "Misery," which was a song I believe was in the Teaching Mrs. Tingle with Katie Holmes. I do kind of remember that movie, but I never really watched the movie in its entirety, but I do remember the trailers, just to kind of clarify that. But I'm not really familiar with the Moffats since they were from Canada, but they were kind of... I don't know how much recognition they got here in the United States. If anyone was growing up during the late 90s or at the time when So Weird was around, boy bands was such a big craze in the pop music scene. Obviously, you had your NSYNCs, your Backstreet Boys, you have 98 Degrees, Westlife, and even Hanson as well. And, Moffats were kind of looked as the Canadian version of Hanson. And even, like, pop rock music in the veins of, like, BB Mac also, and probably Savage Garden. But I don't know if you want to consider Savage Garden as a legit boy band, since they don't, like, do the traditional step dancing or, like, like they write their own lyrics, but and just kind of the fact that they're both, in terms of the marketing, that they were kind of catered towards like the female crowd just for their good looks, so to speak. So I'm not really too familiar with the Moffats. I mean, unless I'm doing some research, but I mean, before that, I just didn't really know exactly who the Moffats were and why people were so crazy about them. But then I realized that So Weird was actually shot in Vancouver, which might explain as to why the Moffats were available to guest star in this episode. But yeah, Destiny just was a really cool episode. Really like Mackenzie Phillips' performance as Burr Crew. Just a lot of really deep stuff. I definitely remember this episode like yesterday. Just very fun episode. Then we skipped over to the episode which is called Avatar. Now, interesting enough, for most of So Weird up until this point, you would always have Fee constantly opening up with a narrative. But interesting enough, Jack actually provides the narration of it. Now, Fee ends up taking a backseat in this episode, which explains the narration being different and that it's actually Jack's voice and not Fee's. So Jack, Carrie, and Molly get sucked into this virtual reality thanks to this young computer genius who secretly has a crush on Fee. So by playing mind games, he sends them a set of postcards as they inevitably confronted the kid. Now, towards the end, the kid wipes any memories Carrie, Molly, and Jack had during their confrontation. As far as Jack's narration is concerned, this wouldn't be the only time that he would be providing an introduction or a monologue of a certain So Weird episode. The other episode being Dead Ringer, which is in the third season. Now, but the only other time Fee would be relegated was in Fathom when Molly goes on a date with a merman. So watching this episode, I kind of really thought, like, did they know, like, the producers know that her actress was on her way out at this time? Like, Carrie was using Fee's laptop that she left behind and ends up getting a virus and gets this postcard email from this anonymous user who turns out to be this young computer genius stuck in his own virtual reality. Interesting enough, because this episode was actually a filler episode, but so originally what would happen is that this episode for episode 17 of season 2 was intended to be entitled Chrysalis. So what would happen in this episode, if anyone remembers when Carrie made his debut in the show, where he ended up getting dropped out of college to join along with his family. According to John Cooksey's FAQ, this was originally about Carrie turning out to be an alcoholic, as Jack discovers when he accompanies Carrie back to college. Carrie drinks a suspect bottle of tequila with a very strange-looking worm at the bottom. Jack is initially more worried about being in an awkward situation and about Carrie's drinking than the worm, but then Carrie's body starts to go through weird physical transformations and bloat. At the end, it turns out that the creature wasn't a worm, but a very weird caterpillar, still alive in the alcohol, and that it was Carrie's body as a cocoon for its transformation. The winged creature crawls out of Carrie's mouth and at the end and flies away, bringing Carrie, who remembers it all only as the worst binge ever, to the realization that he has a problem. Also in this episode, Molly would get a message from Rebecca, who you might remember her from the first season of the same episode title name, that Rebecca is intending on communicating with Molly to foreshadow a future third season episode which never materialized. Molly ends up pouring out her heart and misgivings to her old friend, telling us a lot of her history with Rick and the way her own alcoholism affected her family. The subject, having come up with Jack, asked her earlier what he should do if he had a friend with a drinking problem. Oh, so this was actually rewritten a few times because originally this was supposed to be about Molly's 12 Steps to Alcoholism. I don't think that's 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay, so that was going to be the explanation because it was pretty implied that Molly was a alcoholic, but it was never directly stated throughout the show's run. Yeah, there was a couple of rewrites over the concept of this episode about alcohol and how Carrie actually used to be alcoholic going to college and had a hangover when he was in college. And Molly was kind of going through some problems as well, implied in the lyrics to the TV show's theme song In the Darkness. Because this was on a more family-driven network like Disney Channel, I could see why they would reject an episode concept like it. They were, as far as the rewrite is concerned, this would have been like a traditional after-school special episode where Jack and Carrie would visit one of Carrie's friends from college, and it turns out that he had some sort of alcohol problem. But even despite that, Disney rejected that idea, and thus just the overall premise was tossed out the window in favor of Avatar. But Avatar was just kind of more of like a decent time wasting episode, but it's just kind of a missed opportunity to do a Chrysalis episode, which sounds very interesting, but I can understand why Disney wouldn't want to go in that route. Like they would have to put a warning discretion sign just to make sure that that this episode contains such and such. But overall, I mean, Avatar, like I said, just a very decent time wasting episode. Nothing too special. There are definitely better episodes from this season. So then we get to the 21st episode of the second season, which is entitled Roswell. Now, this episode emphasizes on the Roswell UFO crash in New Mexico in 1947. It's believed that a homeless man discovers an anonymous artifact that he discovered from, what was believed to be from the UFO crash from that time frame. His father, Andrew, Andrew is the homeless man that it's turned out. So his father was an Air Force pilot, and he insists that Andrew shouldn't tell anyone that they saw. Now, over the years, Roswell citizens had different beliefs surrounding the crash. Now, at the gas station, the gang encounters a mentally challenged person. Like I discussed, his name is Andrew. So when they find out that he's homeless, that he doesn't have any money to pay for whatever he was buying at the convenience shop. So Fiona, Molly, and Jack Carey volunteer to help Andrew out and have him drop him back off at his sister's place. So in doing so, they conduct this research that Fee discovers that it was believed that the alleged UFO was disguised as a weather balloon. And Jack's like all denying this, and Molly's actually buying into some of the information gathering from the UFO crash from that time. So, speaking of Molly, when everyone's all asleep, Molly gains gains a bit of a dream that's going on where she notices there's like an alien touching hands, and this kind of opens up this holographic image of her husband Rick, and Molly just wakes up. Andrew explains in detail regarding the artifact that he and his father discover at the time of the crash. Towards the end of the episode, Andrew gives Fee a sort of a device which turns out to be an alien translator that allows aliens to decipher what humans are saying in their own separate language. So Fee ends up getting the alien translator that pretty much ends the episode there. Now, I wonder what Molly's dream had been about involving her connection to the aliens. I mean, when it projected the holographic image of Rick, it seemed like they were trying to keep in touch with her. Or perhaps the aliens tried to receive a message from Rick who tried to warn Molly of something, but there was really no response from Rick. But I really liked that one pep talk that Carrie had with Andrew, and using that comparison about what he would feel, the way he conveyed his emotions the instant they brought up his brother Clue, and how he would feel if he saw his little brother as helpless and homeless like Andrew has been currently put through. Like, I can't really remember a whole lot of defining moments of Carrie, but this particular scene I really enjoyed from him. One of the very few instances of Carrie really showing a bit of character here, really showing some sympathy towards towards Andrew. So when Andrew and his sister receive a postcard mentioning Rebecca's name, I really like that shocking expression that Molly had. It's like, how is it possible for Rebecca to be around at the time of the Roswell crash? And there's actually a secret that Molly doesn't really realize, that Rebecca is actually a lot older than she looks. But Molly and Rebecca haven't really crossed paths for many years, and just to see Rebecca's name just flash in front of her eyes, just Like, something's really up. Something very fishy about that woman. But overall, I find Roswell to be a very moving episode. It's just really a shame because they were kind of building up with Fee and, with using the alien translator, that they were going to plan on doing something with it, but fortunately, it just never really panned out because of the circumstances regarding Disney's refusal to. Uh, I'm gonna get a little more into that later on, I believe, towards the end of the video or in my discussion for season three. Roswell, just like I said, just a very moving episode, very heartfelt. There you go, that. Now, the 22nd episode, which is entitled Vampire. Now, this is a Jack focused episode, and Jack gets enlisted in a website called OSSN, which is an online service that provides students assistance on academic school subjects. When they visit the campus, little would he, Molly, and Fee find out that the online service is in fact a scam. Now, adding more intrigue, Fiona discovers during her research that the company's headquarters are located in Romania, a country formerly known as Transylvania, and Fiona just becomes suspicious given the implication that the employees in charge are legit vampires. As the employees direct the Phillips family to their lair, they end up luring the three into a trap. And it turns out that the person in charge of OSSN had some, no pun intended, bad blood on one of the Phillips family, that being Fee's father, Rick, when he exposed the employee's father that he was actually a vampire. So he puts Molly, Fee, and later Jack. Well, he puts Molly and Jack to sleep, and then Fiona to sleep after a bit of a conversation. So Jack's laid to rest, and while all that's going on, an enchanting glow ensues from the angel pendant that came from Gabe in that episode from season 1, Angel. So with the supernatural powers of Gabe's angel pendant, Jack immediately wakes up. He storms out of the lair as he gets Fee and Molly out of the place. And the episode concludes with Fee on her laptop informing everyone about the conspiracy surrounding the online service. How did the Phillips family get in that load of trouble? I mean, what would exactly motivate Rick in tracking down the vampires in the first place? Could he have expressed interest in joining OSSN, but then he found out that, like Fee, that they weren't who were they say they were? When I watched the episode the first time, and even looking at the title alone, I would expect a episode where the main characters, or well, it doesn't have to be Fee, but one of the main characters of that episode transform into a particular vampire, or at least it's what the villain of the week had intended on. When Fee mentioned about Jack's ornament, that it wasn't the angel pendant that protected him, but rather the attraction he and Gabe have, was she aware about the power that the ornament possesses? And if Jack is believed to be a reincarnation of Night, did his ancestor might have possessed it at some point in time? Given the ending where the vampire is shown eavesdropping from the family tour bus, when I watched the episode the first time around, I thought for sure that this signified we hadn't seen the last of the OSSN group. According to So Weird writer Jay Bryant, the vampire whose name was Pete that had a crush on Fee intended it as a farewell to Fee, and that was pretty much the end of the episode there. Vampire was it was a very peculiar episode, but also again Rick's getting mentioned once again. It's like he's always creating these sort of, like, he's been creating a lot of enemies along the way, so maybe one of the vampires might have been involved in Rick's tragic incident, or at least when I keep thinking about the more times that maybe the more villains that Rick has been involved, of all the paranormal investigating and all the enemies he's created, it's like, man, could the vampires have been involved in causing the crash? At least what I thought going into this episode, watching it the first time around. Vampire, just a very intense episode. Then we have is a one of the one out of the two clip show episodes of So Weird. The first being Encore. Now, this episode highlighted a set of key events that occurred over the course of 38 episodes. A concert takes place as Molly performs in front of a capacity audience. The significant part about this episode is revealed when she informs everyone that she'll quit touring in favor of recording her album. Considering all the superstition in the family that they've experienced since the beginning of the show's run, Fee convinces her mother to reconsider and that she's just come this far, and she feels like she's one step closer to solving the mystery behind her father's death. Everyone's like freaked out because Molly's decision just kind of happened on the fly out of nowhere. So, as I discussed in my first season analysis of So Weird, I did mention that Encore was, ironically, the first episode I watched in its entirety. But because this is somewhat of a clip show, I don't really necessarily have as much detail to discuss compared to some of the other previous episodes I've discussed so far throughout this video. However, I did enjoy the fact that we got to revisit Molly's music throughout the show's duration. It felt like a summary of every significant event that would be built upon in time for season two's finale. And I was just very disappointed for years, not hearing the actual full-length music performances of these songs. I mean, as far as like studio versions of it, because for many years you couldn't really find good quality videos containing some of the songs. And, like a lot of it was shot in like taking clips from the episode or like sound bites from the episode Encore, and it's really cool that there was actually studio versions of these actual songs that you could find on here. But I mean, one of the things that really made So Weird really unique was just the overall music in general. Considering that the mother, the main character of the show, is an aspiring musician, plays a really big part in terms of the show being centered around music. And that's kind of one of the unique things I found about So Weird in general. I thought Encore was proved to be pretty worth watching, despite the fact that this was a clip show. Because normally clip shows are just kind of packaged together just to kind of save money. Just about the second to last episode of season two, which is called Transplant. Now, this episode is notably John Kane's second and final appearance of the show, as you remember him from Strange Geometry, where he was involved in shooting a music video for Molly's song. I think it was called New Math. But in this episode, sometime after Strange Geometry, it's revealed that John had undergone surgery where he successfully receives a heart transplant. Now, as a result of the process, he begins to experience a set of hallucinations involving his time in the hospital. So John devotes his time crafting this device that allows people who can see through the scope of outer space. When John goes through paranoia, Fee tries to search for a nearby telephone in John's house, and when she finds out about the telephone, it turns out that John actually has created this sort of unusual device or model, so to speak. This was another one of my personal favorite episodes, including, like I said, would be John's second and final appearance of the show. To think long ago, he, Molly, and Rick toured together as one of the popular music groups of their time. And, just to see John making an attempt to play the guitar and the fact that he messed up his riffs to one of his songs just really frustrated him. A lot of that had to do with the transplant's after effects. I mean, putting my shoes inside John's, I just wouldn't know for sure how I would feel if I had undergone a similar surgery like getting a heart transplant. Could I be trying to be an aspiring musician like John was, and all of a sudden I know how to play the guitar, but it's just the feeling inside the drive, the motivation just isn't there because of the heart transplant. As the episode progresses, they find out that the name of the name of the guy who ended up getting the heart transplant turns out to be a guy named Ben, who was an aspiring scientist who was investigating on outer space. And John getting that heart transplant from Ben ends up having this obsession of creating these scientific devices and conducting all this research in his free time. And John just can't really help himself but create these sort of devices just to find out that there's whether or not there's life in outer space, and particularly making an attempt to contact the aliens. That played a big part in this episode. I just kind of really feel for John's character and just really some of the stress that he was going through. And I mean, him and Molly and Rick, they were one of the most popular music groups of their time. But now, just fast forward after the breakup, John just doesn't really have the heart anymore. No pun intended. Just being one of the aspiring guitarist and just really losing that drive. It's just really kind of have you want to sympathize for him and really feel sorry for him. Just really loved the nature of this episode. Now we get to the season finale of season 2, and this would, in my opinion, and as well as a lot of fans' opinion, that this was really where So Weird peaked in terms of creativity. The episode called Twin. As Molly is scheduled to attend a talk show, she and the family fly to New York while spending the night over at their Aunt Rachel's house. While falling asleep, Fiona discovers Rachel's handwriting depicting an unknown language revealed to be a twin code that she and Rick had created. Sophie finds out that her aunt possesses the ability to contact Rick, which similar in the way that Rick, when he was alive, was able to contact Rachel, constantly writing messages when they're falling asleep, for instance. Rachel's kind of denying all this, that she has this secret ability, that she and Rick have this ability to really communicate with one another. And even though Rick had passed away, his spirit's still out there. And it's explained that she and Rick kept a collection of messages transcribed in an unknown, what could be an alien-based language, of an encoding unknown language that's written on paper. Now, all of a sudden, she receives yet another message from Rick insisting her to meet him on a building rooftop somewhere in Manhattan. Momentarily before she would exit through the curtain, Molly experiences a premonition or vision involving Fiona's safety and concern. So, just momentarily before she could go through the curtain, Molly makes an attempt to go look for her and Rachel, but Jack insists that she stay put while Jack attempts to search for both Rachel and Fee. Now, the final minutes of the show contains Molly's performance entitled Love is Broken, as Fiona and Rachel head to the rooftop. Believing that their father no-showed, Fee and Rachel prepare to head on back, but just before Fee could follow Rachel to the stairwell, the door all of a sudden closes. Rachel struggles to open the door while shouting her niece's name. Fee, standing outside of the rooftop, has no idea what's going on until a mysterious creature comes lurking from the wall, and this conversation ensues. Fee's just wondering, how are you and what do you want with me? And the figure knocks Fee off the ledge, leaving her hanging on the rooftop. Just when it looks like Fee's about to fall, Rick's spirit appears, rescuing his daughter in the process. He addresses the issue of losing his daughter before his time, and ending it with a farewell speech that it's time to say goodbye. By the time that Jack and Rachel manage to make it back out on the rooftop, Rick's spirit is nowhere to be seen. Fee tells him that she's okay, everything's going to be alright. So the episode ends with Fee, Jack, and Rachel leaving the building rooftop all together. Now, everything I witnessed during the last 7 minutes summarized what I thought about not only this episode, but just really about the original premise of the show was. After 38 episodes, just all that anticipation of Fee crossing paths with their father just really culminates here. And it's just the music and how, just passionately driven, just, especially with Love is Broken, how, with the guitar riff, really kind of reminds me of I want to say a Pink Floyd song, Uncomfortably Numb. That guitar riff during the middle of the song, it just really kind of captured the drama and just really built the whole scene and really making it more like epic and more blown away, so to speak. It was definitely the peak of the peak of the entire show's run. It's just really a shame because there was actually a different ending of this particular episode, Twin. Now, going back and reciting some of the information from John Cooksey's FAQ from many years ago, Twin's original ending. The original ending of Twin was that Fee's dad saves her from getting knocked off the rooftop, same as what happened in the actual ending. But then there's one difference. Before the creature returns, he tells her that she's on a mission that is and has always been her destiny to keep evil from entering our world, and she must continue. He also tells her that the evil killed him before his time. The creature then returns and Rick shoves Fee out of the way. Rick and the creature fall off the building, struggling and disappearing the ground, apparently never to be seen again. And this led to two options. That A, to make Fee think that she'd never see her father again, and B, to also give a signal that her mission was much larger than just finding weird stuff. I mean, the episode was still cool for what it was, but just the original idea for the ending, just having the show, especially this season, be sort of a cliffhanger to really set up for what was going to happen in season 3, it even boggles my mind just to this day, just what could have been. And that moment where Fee and Rick had their moment just was very breathtaking. It just would have been very tragic just to see Fee just talk to Rick once again, get that opportunity, which would be cool, just to see her father. And then Rick ends up getting taken away by the creature and sending him back to hell, and Fee has to go through hell, literally going through hell in order to save Rick. Oh man. The more I start doing these researches, the more bummed that all these storylines, moments, and plans that they were gonna do for the last season of So Weird just never really came to fruition. And when we get to season 3, I just have a hard time just really following up such an intense TV show, especially during Fee's run as the lead character. I mean, I'll probably get more into detail when we get to season 3 as far as what would have been if the original showrunners had stuck around for the third season. But just the more that I'm reading it, it just kind of makes me more bummed that a lot of these ideas never really came to pass. But overall, this episode, just regardless, just was a very terrific episode. Just the acting and just the storytelling, just the music during the last 7 minutes of the episode just really blew me away as a viewer. And that's really my thoughts on the season 2 in general. Just definitely a terrific season. This was really where the show started to hit its stride and its apex in terms of creative storytelling and character development. Season 2 definitely had it all. Join me next time as I discuss about the third and final season of this particular sci-fi drama. So stick around for that. Leave down your comments in the comment section below. Tell me what your thoughts about season 2. What were some of your favorite episodes, favorite moments? Just let me know down in the comment section below. Stay tuned for season 3. And until then, this is the GSTV viewer signing out.